Hello everyone, Max here with Fiction Rant to bring you a versus matchup speed round. Star Trek versus Star Wars, except both sides get absolutely everything. So the Empire and the Rebels will be teaming up and they'll get tons of Jedi and Sith soldiers and even the Mortis gods of the Force. Fighting them will be everything that Star Trek has to offer, from the Federation, Klingons, Romulans, and Cardassians to the Borg, Dominion, and all the supernatural beings that they encounter during their adventures. Also, if you want to support the channel, there's a coffee link in the description. As usual, I'll be doing my full breakdown, but I'll spare you many of the details since this will be a speed round. Speaking of speed! Both sides can travel much faster than light, despite the fact that Star Wars insists on just calling everything light speed. This is clearly a colloquial term, and in fact, demonstrably, that light speed is up to millions of times the speed of light. Meanwhile, in Star Trek, short-range transportation is achieved either via shuttles, which are approximately the same speed as Star Wars shuttles over short distances, but they also get transporters, which cut out the middleman entirely and nearly instantly deposit the travelers wherever they want to go, be that on a planet or on another ship. Faster than light speed in Star Trek is a little more complicated since it varies wildly from baseline warp factors that most of the factions use, which are relatively slow, up to a few thousand times the speed of light, so nowhere near the ballpark of the colloquial light speed from Star Wars. But then we get into things like transwarp corridors that the Borg use, which are about as fast as Star Wars light speed, actually, and both even have to use specific corridors, so their mobility options are equally limited. Weapons. In space, Star Wars uses the iconic turbo laser as their workhorse weapon, which does a decent amount of damage at relatively short range, astronomically speaking, while being manually targeted with sensor assistance by gunners. Star Trek uses a variety of phasers, disruptors, torpedoes, etc., which all tend to have ranges in excess of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, far beyond what turbo lasers can typically hit, while doing wildly inconsistent amounts of damage, from the tech manuals from the Next Generation saying that the phaser array on a Galaxy-class ship can output a few megajoules of energy, to the Sovereign class supposedly being able to output 125,000 terajoules. Wildly inconsistent, as I said. On the grander scale, Star Wars loves its superweapons, and in every era there seems to be a Death Star or a superweapon of some other kind which is capable of either blowing up whole planets or just killing everybody on the surface. Meanwhile, in Trek, most factions just don't use planet-killing superweapons, but it seems that every ship just comes with the means to either crack a planet by drilling big ol' holes deep into their surface, or they can, as Ben Sisko did, deploy some tri-cobalt devices laced with selenium, which poison a whole atmosphere and force all the humans to leave. Or, in the case of the Borg, skip the destruction and just make more Borg. On the ground, Star Wars sports a lot of blasters, which are plenty dangerous. They also have Force users who can utilize heightened reflexes while wielding their lightsabers, or just throw things or people around with telekinesis, or if they're feeling particularly spicy and have the power needed, they can throw around lightning to fry their enemies. They also utilize a lot of armored vehicles of multiple varieties. On the Star Trek side, there's plenty of energy weapons, which are incredibly dangerous, capable of everything from stunning enemies to vaporizing them. And there's plenty of melee combat going on, though almost never with energy blades, just normal metal ones. Also a lot of double-handed pummeling strikes, all the double-handed pummeling strikes. Basically, nobody in Trek bothers with armored ground vehicles. Moving on to defenses. Both sides use shields and armor. I don't really feel the need to go more in-depth than that. Numbers. This is a little hard to judge since I'm including all factions on each side, but if I had to guess, I'd say that with all the factions combined, Star Trek would outnumber the Star Wars factions by several multiples. That said, no faction in Star Trek really fields armies. The most we tend to see is a few thousand troops being deployed to occupy a captured planet, and even then, there aren't all that many deployed since the transporters allow them to get around so fast. So in terms of actual foot soldier numbers, the Star Wars factions probably pull pretty significantly ahead. They also have, the benefit of armored vehicles, unlike Star Trek. Unique advantages. Star Wars gets the Force, and all the shenanigans therein. Star Trek gets transporters, various supernatural entities, not to mention a bunch of random one-off stuff that was the focus of an episode or two before apparently either being forgotten entirely or just, written out for whatever reason. Tactics. Star Wars tactics are awful. As a good benchmark, we'll briefly discuss Thrawn, the greatest tactical genius in all of Star Wars. In his first novel, he managed to stun and amaze a former commanding officer to the point where the man couldn't even believe that Thrawn could possibly have determined what he did because Thrawn utilized sensor triangulation. You know, that thing that your GPS just does automatically. Also, feast your eyes on this clip of some Imperial captains ramming their Star Destroyers into each other because the Millennium Falcon brilliantly flew down. Yeah, they're pretty bad. Star Trek, on the other hand, is full of geniuses. Granted, sometimes these geniuses end up with whole episodes dedicated to the massive screw-ups that they create, but basically everybody is at least smart, and with the exception of a few cases of hubris or ignorance or just, oh no, this didn't go as well as we hoped, their decisions tend to at least make sense. Alright, that's all the comparison categories, so who wins in the various matchups? We've got Jedi, we've got Sith, we've got Rancors, we've got Force Gods, and on the Trek side we have...
Alright.